Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Alliance of Independent Authors Advanced Self-Publishing Salon with me, Joanna Penn, and Orna Ross. Hi, Orna.
Hi, Joanna. Hello, everyone.
Yes, so today we are talking about publishing values, exploring craft engagement and volume publishing. And we'll be talking about all of that in a minute. But first of all, some updates. So, Orna, what's going on with Ally?
Yes, so we have Self-PubCon happening at the weekend. So that's our self-publishing advice conference.com. Every year we do this 24 sessions over 24 hours on a particular publishing theme. And this time our theme is Reach More Readers.
Always
So
good.
always good, always needed. We can't have enough readers. So yeah, we've got loads of really good people coming to talk to us about what's working in terms of reaching your reader in 2022 and going into 2023. What's changed, what's the same, what are the tools and tech and all of that, but what are also the evergreen principles. So we've got all sorts of goodies with all sorts of great people like Nick Stevenson and
Lots of
KDP.
people.
Yes, I should mention KDP and Ingram Spark are our platinum and gold sponsors, and lots of other great sponsors also. And yeah, we're really looking forward to it, while slightly panicking at this stage, as always. Yeah.
And there's also the data drop you wanted to mention.
Yes. So anyone who's kind of been in this business for a little while will know that the information and data about self-publishing is really skewed. It's either absent completely or it's misinterpreted for all sorts of reasons, which I won't go into now. But we are trying to do something. It's been bothering us for many a year. And there's a sort of a dearth of data generally about indie authors and self-publishing, and we're trying to address that. So we're hoping to bring together a number of people in the community. And so far we've got Draft Digital on board, K-Lytics and Written Word Media, who are all bringing their own different perspectives to data that they have. And we are also going to be sending a survey to, we hope, 5 questions only, easily answered, short and sweet, that will get some sort of awareness of what's really going on in terms of author income in the self-publishing space. So I just wanted to let people know that that's happening. You can read a bit more about it on selfpublishingadvice.org/data drop. And yeah, just to let people know that it's happening. If you have a writing community, we'd really welcome spreading the word and letting people know, sharing the survey when the time comes. We will actually be doing the work in the spring, but we're doing the groundwork now and laying down the foundations because we want this to be an annual thing. So yeah, and to be bigger and more comprehensive than any sort of data that we've had in the space up to now. So it's a big project for us, and we will need everybody's help. So just kind of putting the word out there nice and early.
Yes. So when you hear about it, then please, everybody, please join in the survey. That's what we're asking. And you'll know because you'll hear it everywhere on every channel once it's available. Right. So for me, I am now working on my pilgrimage book. So for people who've just joined us, I walked the Camino de Santiago, but also over the last 2.5 years, I've walked 3 solo pilgrimages on ancient ways. And so now I'm writing the book on it. And I know you'll understand this, Orna. I am finding the more memoir-y type writing to be much slower. It's not like, oh, I'll just sit down and write 2,000 words. Like it is much harder. And I am literally wrangling journals and notes and books, and I'm in the wrangling chaos side. Also, what was interesting is I've just done my solo show a month after I got back on my books and travel podcast. It took a month to kind of work out what I felt about the whole thing. But also with the book, there's something very interesting happened. So I decided on a title and a subtitle, and I took 6 covers that Jane, our designer, did to my patron community. And I said, which cover do you like? I thought it would really help me to have this cover. And what was interesting is they all decided on one particular cover, like 70% of people loved it. But what it made me see was that's the wrong cover and it was the wrong subtitle. So I've actually had to change the subtitle of the book because I realized that this cover everyone liked was not the truth of the book. The cover was giving the wrong idea for what the book is going to be. So I wanted to share it with everyone because so often we do get covers early, but especially as a discovery writer, sometimes the book doesn't turn out in the way that you expected. And also a cover can give a really incorrect perspective of what the book might be. So I wanted to change to share that with people. But yeah, basically I'm working on that pilgrimage book. And what about you? What are you up to?
Super interesting. Yeah, so I'm resting my fiction. I got my first draft of A Life Before finished, which was thrilling for me because that's the first fiction draft that I have completed in 7 years. So that was great. And I am now working on non-fiction updates and everything while I kind of rest that and yeah, doing the conference and all that kind of thing. The other thing I've started, which is a slightly more engagement-y kind of thing, is a weekly poetry contest on Instagram, which is brilliant in terms of just seeing other people's poetry and stuff. So I'm really enjoying that. And if you are on Instagram and you're a poet, then do drop by #indie-poetry, please. And yeah, I'd love to see your work and spread the word. So yeah, that's me for this month.
Fantastic. Right. So let's get into our topic for today. So, Orna, you just released an article on the Ally blog, which people can find at selfpublishingadvice.org/values. And we'll link to that in the show notes. But it is about the 3 different kinds of publishers. So, start by giving us just a high level overview of the 3 based on publishing values.
Yeah, so the important thing to say is that it's publishing values we're talking about here rather than writing values. That's the most important thing. And the 3 are craft publishing, engagement publishing, and volume publishing. And so that's what they are. And we'll talk a little bit more about them as we go through, obviously. But essentially, craft publisher focuses on creative quality and excellence in the publishing. Now, remember, we're talking about engagement publishing focuses on readers and being responsive to readers. And a volume publisher focuses on driving algorithms. That's essentially the difference between them. And I think, you know, this observation, if you like, is born of looking at a lot of different self-publishers, a lot of different indie authors over the years, but also looking at trade publishing. I really think that approaches to publishing fall into one of those 3 categories, and they interlink and they overlap and so on. It's not a clean, like most things in publishing, it's not clear cut. But I definitely feel that there's a huge emphasis on the volume publishing model in indie author advice land, for want of a better word. And so I wanted to write this post just to say that is a way to do it. That is a way to succeed. That is a way to make a living, make an income, but it's not the only way to do it. And if you are not that way inclined, it's not a good way to try to do it. And so that's what the post was about, really.
Right. Well, you've covered lots of details there, so we'll try and unpack those a bit more. So first of all, I mean, you've mentioned there a bit about there are a lot of noisy voices in the community which make it seem like the high volume volume publishing is the only way. But are there other problems in the community that you've seen, or other reasons why you wanted to put this out there now?
Yeah, because the reason it kind of went out now is because I've been thinking about this for a long time, and doing the annual update to my self-publishing guide, the Ally self-publishing guide, I decided it was time to kind of include this, because while I speak a lot in that guide about values from the writer perspective, I think values are really, really important. Understanding your values, to me, as a writer and as a publisher, is key to you being able to reach your reader, understanding what your reader wants and values in your work. And, you know, they exchange value in the shape of their investment in your books. It all circles around your values. So writing values, yeah, it begins there. The things that's going to decide things like your niche, your genre, obviously your overall genre, but your niche and how you go about it, how you reach your readers, and all of that. Then, but it doesn't allow for how you actually go about your publishing. So, which is a different thing, and that's where this idea of publishing values came in. And so I think that was the reason. Really, it was just the update to the book, and then I just found myself thinking about this, and the more I thought about it, and then I brought it up with my patrons, actually, the planning patrons, some couple of months ago, and a few of them were really struck by it. And I had the experience of them basically saying, I've been doing things wrong all along. And
okay, but stop there, because you get going off on too many tangents, and I'm trying to corral them back.
Okay.
Okay, so I was writing down there this kind of matrix idea. So I think this is very important, and it can be this is the advanced salon, everyone. So what we tend to do in indie land is we're like, are you KU versus wide? Are you plotter? Are you pantser? It's like there are these binary things that we talk about that make people feel like they need to be just one thing or another thing. But what you're talking about here is this publishing value idea, so volume, engagement, craft, that there's a matrix. So for example, you might be a volume publisher who does KU, but you might also be a volume publisher who publishes on their Shopify store, like Katie Cross, who now, gave up on KU and, well, not gave up, but she's focusing entirely on selling direct. So I think what you're saying is this publishing, the one of these three values as such, is not the same as your publishing technique or how you market or even your personality. So for example, one of my life values is freedom, which is why I struggle with things like Kickstarter. I feel like I'm hemmed in by particular things. And, so having that as a life value, that's on another matrix. So is that how you're looking at it, that this is just one of the boxes on the matrix of how each individual will choose their indie adventure type of thing?
Yes. And I think, you hit the four of them there, though. There's your life values, your values as an author, your values as a publisher, and what was the other one you said?
Marketing, how you do marketing.
Yeah, well, marketing is part of publishing. So yeah, I think it's, your publishing values. So they are the four things that you're kind of going to hit. So with your publishing values, the reason you would need to kind of have some sort of sense of it is that it gives you your priorities as you go about your publishing tasks. So your business model, as you rightly say, is something slightly different. Your personality and all of those things that you bring, they will all fit in within it. But understanding what your actual perspective or value, on publishing is, tells you what your priority should be. So for a volume publisher, the priority is rapid release. It's productivity. The value is productivity, and your priority is going to be rapid release. For an engagement publisher, your value is connection with the reader, and your publishing priority is going to be relationship with the reader. So reader relations becomes really important for you. Craft publishing, your number one value is the quality of the experience. And so your number one publishing priority is creativity. And of course, that's not to suggest that a volume publisher doesn't care about craft. It's not like that. And it's not, we won't please our readers if we don't publish often enough. You won't produce many books if you don't harness your creativity, and so on. You won't develop creatively unless you're publishing and writing often. So they're interlinked. All of us need to do all of these things to some degree. But the point is, which is the one you're going to lean into? And if you're a craft publisher publisher, for example, or an engagement publisher, and you're trying to run a productivity rapid release model, you may well find yourself not able to do it and feeling that you have in some way failed, but you haven't failed. You're just trying to do something that doesn't suit your publishing values.
Yeah, and I feel like this is so much of a challenge. I mean, I find it a challenge, and because I guess I talk to so many different people, and so do you, is that I'm always coming up against, well, maybe I should, maybe if I, we don't like should, obviously, but maybe if I did things this way, then X might happen. And usually that is, if I could do rapid release, I would make more money. That's usually one of the most common thoughts that people have. But we know that's not true, because the stories are often about the success stories, but there are also people for whom it doesn't work, or also it doesn't work for their personality. So for us, the challenge of every individual is deciding where on these matrices you want your craft and your business to be. But let's go into some things in slightly more detail, so we can unpack what these are. And again, just to reiterate, the word values is not suggesting that anyone is better than another. It's just that they are different types of things. So you could call it types, for example. I don't want people to think we're valuing one thing any higher than something else, right?
I think that's really, really important. I mean, values are neutral, but the problem is that people bring opinions and judgments around values. And so people always think their own values are the best. And in publishing in particular, there's a really sort of unbalanced situation where craft type publishing, because the people who work in publishing tend to value that most themselves, and that type of publishing gets an awful lot more attention in mainstream media and in terms of publishers' lists and what they put out front and so on. The books that actually keep a lot of publishing houses going don't get a lot of attention, and they are often people who are running the engagement model or the volume model. So I don't want people to think we're talking about sort of production values in a literary sense or anything like that. It's the values are completely neutral. Each one is as valuable as the other. The question for each of us is, what do you value most? That's the question you kind of need to ask yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about volume publishing, which I feel you've mentioned that the publishing priority is rapid release. What I'd like us to maybe focus on is how to improve that. So in the article, you have a lot about how to lean in as a volume publisher. So I guess the question would be, how do we know that this might suit us or does suit us, and how do we improve and lean in on that model?
Yeah, so as a volume publisher, as the name sort of implies, you're obviously going to be trading in as many books as possible, and you're likely to be attracted to what they call, the whale reader genre, so romance, fantasy, and so on. The ones where you've got the readers who just can't get enough, and you will publish early in the cycle, so you won't sort of be picking away in a perfectionist sort of way at the product. You will, once you have it up and ready, you'll get it out there, you'll write fast, and you may well hire other writers, either as ghostwriters or collaborators, because your publishing priority is rapid release, and the more books you can put out there, the better under this model. So if you want to work this model, or if you find, that you're attracted to this model, you're likely to be somebody who enjoys data and who is interested in driving the algorithms into driving your books through the bestseller lists by tweaking, how you handle usually the Amazon algorithm, usually in KU, but not necessarily. I mean, there are white authors who follow this model as well, obviously. And so, yeah, you'll actually enjoy poring over the data and tweaking your ads and tweaking maybe your emails, tweaking everything you do to get ahead of the algorithm. And you'll want to build streamlined sort of team that keeps costs low, because your readers generally in this model tend to be price sensitive. And if you do social media at all, you may not do it at all. If you do, you'll be a broadcaster. You'll just kind of put your updates out there, and probably automated, probably on as many platforms as possible. You'll engage just if you feel like it, but engagement isn't really part of the plan. And you're likely to use advertising, digital advertising, discount promotions, value pricing, and you a very good eye on the competition, and you're always kind of trying to get one over on your comparable authors in terms of sneaking ahead in the bestseller race, if you like. That's that kind of model.
Yeah, I would add, like, I know one example would be Lindsay Baroka, who, fantastic fantasy author, and Lindsay is a utter introvert and is happiest at the writing desk, and she has basically I think she's written over 80 books over the last I say 80, I like 180, but they are all massive, so 100,000 words to 150 plus, and in series. And Lindsay's favorite pastimes are sitting and writing and walking her dogs, and so she barely does anything. She does ads, as you say, but she barely does social media. She has an email list, but essentially I think this reflects in how you spend your time, in that some of the people who write this way, we don't know a lot of them. They're not hanging out doing podcasts. They're not, doing a lot of this stuff because they are writing. And so if you do this kind of model, although there are some obviously who do co-writing or who do other kinds of marketing for other authors who write in this model, but I feel like it's how you want to spend your time as well, in terms of as you said, it's not, you don't have to engage with people if you're putting out a book a month. Your engagement is a book a month. So that actually, I think that really suits people who that is how they want to spend their time as well. And obviously, we write, but I have never spent as many hours in the chair as Lindsay does. So, that's or as much time analysing data in a way that, a prolific author also, like Mark Dawson, does. So I feel like that model suits a certain way of working as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And this is the value of understanding the models, I think, is understanding your way of working and your way of engaging with the reader. That's absolutely key. That's why it's useful to have this understanding, because there are a lot of indie authors trying to do all the things. They are trying to do social media, trying to write as fast as possible, trying to publish as fast as possible, trying to trying to run creative campaigns, trying to do it all, and it's not possible to do it all. And it's confusing to your reader too. So yeah, it's very much about I can't sit writing for that long.
No,
for
I
example,
can't either.
Doesn't interest me enough. I'm super interested when I'm doing it, but then there comes a point where the brain is just absolutely and I'm really happy to go off and do other things. And I did actually some years ago set out to write full time, and I took a year where I really did try. Now, I was post chemo, so I was suffering from foggy brain, but aside from that, it didn't suit me. I never wrote less in my life. So, this is a very true story. I had all day. Yeah, I'll do it later. I'll just have a coffee. Da, 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 da. I have to know I only have so many hours, and then I will jump in. So yeah, it's very much about knowing what suits you as a writer as well as a publisher. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the second one on the list. And again, these are not 1, 2, 3. They are not in any order. But the next one you put was engagement publishing. And again, you've kind of mentioned, you didn't actually really mention a lot about it, but you talk about special editions, maybe services to readers, customized products, tailored products, and the priority being reader relations. So if tell us a bit more about this and how we can lean in if this is our method.
Yeah, so in order to be a good engagement publisher, you need to set up a structure where you are actually engaging, communicating effectively with your readers almost daily. That doesn't mean that you have to be answering every comment on your latest social update. And often authors think that's what it's about. And, because algorithms on the social platforms reward you for comments. You can see them diligently kind of, and I do this myself, thanking people or engaging and replying and stuff in ways that maybe are not all that productive or all that useful. So it's fine if you enjoy it, that's absolutely fine. But in terms from a publishing perspective, you need to kind of set up a system. And I was really interested when Brandon Sanderson's, famous now crowdfunder, how he did it and how, what was behind it, if you like. And obviously, again, craft and volume are behind it to some degree, because he's published a lot of books. He's been writing for a lot of time, and his readers absolutely love his books, and he writes in lots of different genre and stuff. But it's really interesting to look at his engagement and how he has set it up so that he is constantly communicating with his fans. So he, dutifully answers all his fan mail, but he also posts his answers to lots of his responses, and has been doing this for many, many years. He lists their books and websites of people who have done his courses. He obviously invites fan fiction, but he carefully sort of delineates what's allowed there and what isn't. His knowledge base on his website, his Twitter, is really, really active in terms of engaging with his readers. But he's not at the end of his Twitter account going, having an argument about the latest political situation or whatever. His engagement is very carefully managed. And so it was just interesting to me to see that, because I would have thought that he was probably a volume publisher before I looked closely at how he actually does his engagement. So to lean into being an engagement publisher, you and your team, you need to be actively engaged with your readers in some way. So you need to have set up that structure and understand that regular communication with your readers is really core to what you do. And that may well mean being very receptive to their needs and reactive and nimble in your responses to what they want from you. So, I mean, what you talked about there at the beginning about your own covers and your plans for this new book as you explore, this new way of writing and so on, with your new covers and subtitle and so on. That is classic engagement publisher activity. Surveying your readers, finding out what they liked and so on. Social media, you're not so much a broadcaster here as, again, you're going to be looking for engagement. Again, that doesn't mean answering every single post, but doing giveaways, contests, quizzes, answering your readers' problems, maybe, depending on what kind of writing you do. And engagement publishers are often found doing physical events as well. They turn up, they do hand selling, they do social selling, they do very well on social commerce. So you can see how it really is quite a different model to the volume publisher.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting. I know you always put marketing with publishing, and in my mind, they're kind of two different things. But the engagement model, instead of writing a book a month, for example, you can find out more what your readers want, and then write a book to that market, your own market, which I see a lot of people selling direct are now doing more of. But it's interesting you put me in that category, because I didn't think I was that person.
Just referring to that part of what you did. Sorry, I don't want to confuse people by suggesting that. No, I
mean, just to be clear, because more about my personality, I'm not someone who I don't chat on social media. I'm not a very sociable person in general. You know, I'm an introvert. I'm not shy introvert, but I'm an introvert. But it's interesting, as you were talking, I kind of thought, you know what, I am kind, for my non-fiction side, for Joanna Penn, I am quite engagement in that I have the podcast, I get comments on the show, I get emails, and I do have quite an active email relationship for my non-fiction. And then I have Patreon for the podcast. And over the years, it's the podcast that has shaped my non-fiction books. So, for example, Audio for Authors, which is about audiobooks, podcasting and voice technologies, I wrote that book because every 5 minutes I was getting, how do I do a podcast? You know, what should I do with audiobooks? And I was like, right, I need to write a book on this because there isn't really one for authors. So that's quite interesting. And but
you're raising a really important point, which is that you can actually be a different kind of publisher for one series or one section of your work. So you can actually run the two different types. You can have a different set of values. So, you know, in your fiction, it's more craft. In a publishing model, in your nonfiction, it's more engagement. And the fact that you are a broadcaster largely on social media, so there's the craft coming in there as well. The quality of the posts is enough. You don't really have to do a lot of engagement. I know you do engage a bit, but you know, engagement isn't core. You're more of a broadcaster. So in that sense, that is there. But as you say, in your podcast does allow you to have that kind of engagement, and readers are core to your nonfiction. So yeah, that's really important, I think, to say that we can have different aspects of our personality and we can be running different model, just to confuse us even more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, then let's get into the craft publishing. So talk a bit more about that, because this is where you feel you fit as well, right?
Yes, I definitely do. And, you know, in understanding more about this, I think I can observe things that I am going to let go more as I go forward and lean in more and more. So I think that's also something that you do as you develop as a publisher, as you write more books, as you develop different series and different, you know, new things are coming to you. You may find that you are leaning in more to your core thing, and I think that's certainly what I'm finding. So I want to kind of say that craft here doesn't mean literary fiction, because a lot of people get confused about that. So what it actually is creative books and experiences, and readers who are prepared to pay a bit more, so they're not as price sensitive as the readers in the volume publishing model. So it could be high-end literary values, or design, or really kind of treasured products, premium products or services in addition. But the publishing priority is kind of creativity and delighting and exciting the reader. And, you know, to show that it isn't just about literary values, I use the example in the piece of Rupi Kaur, who is, you know, as most people in the poetry world know, the highest paid poet in the world. And she commands large stadia when she goes around the world on her reading, on her book tour. So, and she's amazing. Yeah. And she's a very young woman still, and she's developing as a writer as well as a publisher, and I'm sure will continue to go on to do great things. But if you talk about Rupi in the poetry world, the comment you'll most often hear from poets is she's not a poet.
Yeah, she's not a poet.
She's not a poet, or that's not poetry, you know.
Yeah.
And I understand what poets mean when they say that. So in terms of traditional formal poetic craft and form, no, not at all. But she has really carefully crafted her publishing presence. And she talks about the poems each speaking to each other, and it's the whole body of her work that is the poem, not any one specific piece. She doesn't use any capital letters. She's very, very keyed into her Punjabi heritage, and she is an absolute role model for Sikh women. And she's done all sorts of really interesting, specific campaigns around her poetry. So, yeah, I think it's really interesting watching what she has done and how it's won her this incredibly engaged, adoring following. So to lean in as a craft publisher, it's about building a culture of creativity and quality and ensuring that your team know and your assistants also know that you want to offer unique and prized kind of products and experiences to your readers. Because again, author assistants and stuff are so exposed to the other model that there may be some sort of training that's needed here if you're working with other people in particular. Social media, again, you don't need to engage, but you probably will create, gorgeous book trailers or author explainers that talk about what you do and how you do it and what your value proposition is. In some way, you'll be making that clear to a lot of people. And, your sales and marketing will be geared around campaigns. So you'll run specific campaigns for a period of time, and you'll probably have premium products and things that you offer as well. So it's, again, a different way of approaching everything. And I think the important thing to say about all of these is you have to develop them over time, each of them. None of them sort of jumps in. There is occasionally the breakthrough author who just finds they fall on their feet, or maybe they're just so intrinsically and so organically and naturally one kind of publisher that they just do it that way and it all just works. But for most of us, it's trial and error, trying particular sales and marketing processes in particular, seeing what works, learning from that into the next book, into the next campaign, into the next series. So it builds and develops over time.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's funny, and again, I think hopefully people listening to are sort of finding that they're thinking about the way they're doing things. And I'm thinking about this pilgrimage book, which feels like a craft publishing exercise, which actually I'm putting under JF Penn, which is going to be my first non-fiction. But I felt like it was a JF Penn book, not a Joanna Penn book. And that's interesting to me, that the idea and me wanting to do this, it fits with absolutely nothing. Really, it will just be a sort of standalone thing. And in a way, the craft publisher approach is sometimes to not engage with the community and to not go for the market and to just create something that you feel like you need to create. And hell, if it doesn't sell that much, then that's not the point. It's like it comes from, like you said, you value for this particular project, valuing creativity and what the muse is urging you, rather than even thinking about your readers or even thinking about how it might sell. So that's not the right thing to do all the time. But is that more of a hallmark of that type?
Yes, definitely. And it is amazing how often people will say, I did the whole right to market thing, and then I just did this book where I just did what I wanted to do. And that's when I broke through. So there is no guarantee that trying to write to market will actually succeed. And sometimes, there are no rules in publishing, and nobody ever knows why something completely works. But in the craft publishing end of things, you will find far more standalone projects, not as much, not necessarily as many series writers, and yes, the publisher following the author's muse. So this is kind of what's interesting when you are a self-publisher compared to if you're a third-party publisher. Very often the third-party publisher's role, as they see it, is to kind of moderate the author's creative impulse and urge. And lots of us became indie authors because we wanted to give full head to that. We wanted to actually publish what we wanted to publish. We didn't want our title changed to something that was more commercial, or we wanted to do our own book covers that reflected the heart and soul of the book, and so on. If you're that kind of person, then building up the readers around you who value that kind of publishing is key. And you don't impress those readers by publishing lots of books often. That's not what they're looking for from you. And so you probably have to slow down, not necessarily slow down in terms of success, because very often volume publishers have to publish a lot of work before they hit success. And indeed, many publish lots and lots of books and don't necessarily hit success. But slow down in terms of your pressure on yourself and what you should be doing, and slowly building the audience that values that kind of publishing, because they're not as widespread, obviously, as the readers in the whale genre, where they are, there's a lot more people reading romance than there are people necessarily looking for a fabulous creative experience.
Or a book on pilgrimage.
Or a book on pilgrimage.
Maybe I'll write a pilgrimage romance. But no,
that's okay.
No, so I think, just to reiterate to everyone, this is figuring out where you sit, and it might be per author name, like I've talked about. It might be per project, and it's also partly about your personality and also your time of life. I think this is important too. And sometimes things happen, like life happened. Like, to me, the pilgrimage book and part of the memoir is, is a midlife book as well. It wouldn't have happened if I'd written it at another time, possibly without the pandemic. I wouldn't even have done some of these walks because I would have gone somewhere else. So there's so many things about the time of life that impact the projects that I feel that I do. But are there any other factors that might impact how we sit on this and what changes over time?
Yeah, there might be. I think the things that can happen are either as you go through it, once you kind of choose and realize and lean in and choose which one you're going to actually make your priority and push, as it were, that you develop that more and more, and you found your thing, then everything begins to make sense. Things come together. You've got more creative energy and you take risks and you really go there. Alternatively, what can happen is you kind of mine that scene for a while, and then you find, as you have, a different book, a different stage of life, a different stage as a writer might require a different thing. So it's very much going to depend. But I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that the reason for understanding this about yourself and the reason for kind of connecting with this is because it keeps your creative energies flowing in the right direction. And as we go on and publishing becomes ever more fragmented, it's important that what you're doing really suits you, and finding your place among the readers who think as you do, who care about what you care about, and who are willing to consume, if you like, what you want to create is key. And not pushing against the stream, which very often leads to disillusionment and despair sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So we're out of time. Just to reiterate, the article is at selfpublishingadvice.org/values. So you can find more there. Is there any final words on the topic, or are we good to go?
I think we're good. We are good to go. I would love to hear from people. Is the only thing. If does this make sense? Have we forgotten one? Is there, do you feel you can make this work for you? Are you already making this work for you? Did you realize a long time ago you were a certain kind of publisher and not a different kind, and so on? It would be great to get more feedback about this, just to make sure that it has value, and to hone it maybe if necessary.
And in order to give feedback, you could leave a link on the YouTube video, or in the Facebook group. You can tweet at Indie Author Ally.
Yes, Indie Author Ally, or in this case particularly maybe at Orna Ross.
At Orna Ross.
Yes,
or
and
comment on the article, or when the show is up, on the show notes. So lots of ways to comment there and leave your thoughts, because I hope everyone appreciates that we're not saying that this is some kind of truth. This is, as we explore and things develop all the time. Another thing that could happen is business models change and things don't work anymore, and so people pivot and shift. And in fact, that brings us on to what we will be talking about next month. We are talking about when to quit. That's all we're going to tell you, but it's going to be an interesting discussion. So, Orna, anything else before we go? Remind people where they can go for the conference.
Yes, love to see you all at the conference, selfpublishingadviceconference.com. is the address to go to on Saturday. And if you haven't already, you can sign up there to register for 3 free days so that you can have time to take it all in.
And that would be Saturday the 29th
9th.
of
Yes.
October 2022.
Yes. Not just any old Saturday. Thank you, Joanna.
I realise people are listening in the future, but you
Correct.
can always go to selfpublishingadviceconference.com and find details about the replays and all of that kind of thing. So in the meantime, happy writing.
And happy publishing. Bye-bye.
Bye.